You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the latest episode of Star Trek Picard called Dominion. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Folks, be sure to share the podcast with your friends. That helps us grow our community and reach more listeners. Be sure to stick around to the end of the episode. We definitely have some excellent listener feedback. And another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy is called The Secrets of Middle-earth. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Middle-earth. So before we get to talking about Dominion, there is a bit of news coming out from the folks that make Star Trek for us. The first one is that Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2 has a premiere date of mid-June, I think June 15th or somewhere around there. Yep. And that they have renewed it for a third season already, which seems to be de rigueur for streaming series these days. They renew it even before the season drops. So good news. I think we're all have been looking forward to another season of Captain Pike and Friends, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
And in addition to that, in the same breath, they told us that the season, is it 5 already of Lower Decks, is coming in late summer, so probably August, early September, something like that. And then the next season of Prodigy, too, the beginning of 2024. So
I've noted that people have been saying, oh, but they haven't renewed Prodigy for a season 3. And I'm going, yeah, because it's a kid's show. It's only going to be 2 seasons.
Yeah. And it's it seems like a continuous, like from one, there might be a week or two in between. There might even be an overlap like they've done recently of series, seasons ending and beginning. But we have continuous new Star Trek all the way to the end of the year, and probably after Prodigy's, I don't know if they're going to break it up a season again like they did before or what, but
probably.
After some amount of Prodigy, that's probably when Discovery will come along in its 5th season.
Early 2024, but they haven't given a specific date yet. So the last season of Prodigy. Last season of Discovery.
You're right. And then,
but there's bad news.
But there's more, which is that they also announced that they've greenlit Starfleet Academy, the series, which takes place within the Starfleet, the Discovery timeline of the 32nd century, will probably feature Tilly at Starfleet Academy. I don't know if they'll bring back any of those characters from that one episode that had the cadets in jeopardy with Tilly and all that sort of thing. But I don't have high hopes for it. I think it's going to be more. I don't know if the showrunners and the writers are going to be the same group, probably, from Discovery. So I don't have high hopes.
I have a feeling it's just by their description, it's going to be a coming of age high school drama set in the Star Trek universe.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to generate. I mean, it can be done, but you're not. If it's set in an academy, you're not going anywhere. I mean, you may have field trips, but you're not going anywhere, and it's going to be it's going to be a lot of interpersonal drama, and there's been enough of that on Discovery already.
Well, and given how they've already handled Adara and Gray, Adara, I forget what it is, but I don't have high hopes, so we'll see. They do say that there is going to be some big bad that they're going to have to fight. So there is going to be some big enemy they're going to have to fight. But again, what does that look like? Is this going to be more like Harry Potter in Star Trek?
I know. Yeah,
it might not be too bad if it's done right. But like I said, I have a feeling it's going to be more about the interpersonal relationships, and it's going to be Beverly Hills 90210 set in Star Trek or something like that.
Could be Star Trek: The Search for the Horcruxes.
Yeah. And we may, just like we're no longer reviewing Discovery, we may not review that one as well.
Yeah. Which means we'll talk about classic Trek, which we haven't. I would love to talk about and do more of. They did drop one other nugget. Alex Kurtzman, who's running all of Star Trek for Paramount, did drop the nugget that they have not left behind the Section 31 Michelle Yeoh series, that they are actively working on getting that, producing it, coming up with a way to do that. So they haven't announced that they're going to do it, but they still are planning. So we'll take that with a grain of salt, I suppose.
I wonder if part of the problem is her star has risen again.
Yes.
She's doing a lot of things right now.
Yeah.
And if that's part of the issue, if they want to have her, they've got to fit within her schedule.
Yeah. Academy Awards will do that. So in general, I think lots of positive news for Star Trek fans, lots of things happening, and good stuff that we've enjoyed. There's more of that is being made, and I think that is the positive to take away from it. So I'm happy for that. All right, let's talk about the positives or the negatives of our main topic, which is Dominion, this episode of Picard. Jimmy, can you give us a recap?
This week, the Raffi Musiker show is back on hiatus, so we don't see Raffi and Worf. We also don't see Riker and Deanna in this episode. Instead, we're focused on the Titan. After contacting a changeling version of Tuvok, the gang realizes they can't trust anyone and are on their own, so they decide to use a desperate ploy to try to capture Vadic. Pretending to be disabled, they lure her and her crew on board, and Jack uses himself as bait. Vadic says she wants to take him to a better place, but he leads them on a chase through corridors, and the gang traps them behind force fields. Vadic then reveals the origin story of her group of changelings. She was one of 9 changelings experimented on at Daystrom Station during the Dominion War, apparently by Section 31. This gave her her unusual abilities. It also let her pass on her abilities to other solid life forms. They will have pain and shorter lives, but will be able to shapeshift. This gives Beverly the info she needs to find a way to track changelings, the next generation. Vadic is so remorseless and dangerous that Picard and Beverly decide to kill her. But before they can do so, Lore, who is temporarily the dominant personality in the android, uses a network connection to seize control of the ship, because you always leave your dangerous multiple personality disorder, one of which is evil androids, connected to the Wi-Fi. He pulls down many of the force fields on the principle that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and Vadic and her goons escape. However, Jack is trapped with one goon and Sydney with another. Jack goes into his super soldier mode and kills his goon. He then enters the mind of Sydney, who is on the other side of a force field, and helps her down the other goon. However, Vadic and her remaining goons then assault the bridge. Captain Shaw is severely injured, and the goons gain control. Now in command of the Titan, Vadic makes a ship-wide broadcast and tells Jack that it's time he finally learned who he really is. The end.
One thing I wanted to, something you said right there, was that Vadic gained the ability to give solids the ability to shapeshift. I didn't catch that. I'm gonna have to look at that again.
I thought it was the other way around, but
yeah.
Well, she says she can pass on her. Oh, well, okay. I interpreted it as solids, but she does say she can pass on her abilities, and that those who receive them will have pain and shorter lifespans. And that told me it was solids, in conjunction with Riker's line of previous episode of how much of that goo did they pump into you, to one of her crew members.
Yeah.
Because members of the Great Link, I don't think really have lifespans, because the ocean becomes the one, and the one becomes the drop, and the drop becomes the ocean. I don't think they have lifespans.
Yeah. I thought it was because there was several vials, and I thought the vials all contained changelings, and that she gained this new ability to be even more human, like to form organs, internal organs and stuff, and pass that on. But maybe not. They'll maybe see how that plays out as we go.
No, I took it as well as that she was talking about being able to pass on to changelings the ability to pass as solids.
Yeah.
And if they effectively are immortal, they have no lifespans. To now have a lifespan is a shortened lifespan. So
Yeah, though I would expect the dialogue to say something like, now they'll have only limited lifespans.
Yeah,
you would expect that, but that doesn't mean they did.
Yeah.
That's right.
I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. But to step back a second, just overall impressions. Jimmy, what was your overall impression of this episode?
I liked it. I thought it was an interesting episode. It was a change of pace from what we've had, because this episode, even though it had some action kind of in the towards the end of the first act and towards the end of the last act, it was much slower paced as a whole than previous episodes. It was more meditative. It was a bit more like a horror show, because we're told things in flashback, and Vadic is acting creepy, and there's creepy music, and it's slower paced, and it felt like a horror movie to me. There is some action, but it's not dramatic sci-fi action in all the way through in the way some episodes can be. So I thought it was an interesting change of pace, and I liked it. I am familiar. One of the guys I've been watching on YouTube is Dave Cullen, who has seen all 10 of them, and he's apparently signed an NDE, so he can't talk really about upcoming episodes. He gives little hints. He did not like this. He thought I should say he liked it, but he thought it was the weakest episode of the series so far. He liked the previous episode much better. But I didn't have that experience. I thought it was a nice change of pace after sci-fi action and stuff, to have a more slower paced, let's think about this horror episode.
Cool. Father Cory?
Yeah, I agree. This was a slower episode, but to its benefit. I mean, we got more exposition. We did learn where the changeling faction came from and how they developed as they did. That this wasn't a natural evolution. It was more genetic manipulation than it was an evolution, although they keep using the term evolving and evolution. But we learned more about that. We do get to see kind of the cat and mouse of the Titan first hiding and then trying to lure them into a trap, but of course the Titan ends up being trapped instead. We see Lore, and then the fight between Lore and Data within the emotions, or within the partitions of the android and stuff like that. And so I thought it was well done again for a slower episode, but that has lots of exposition that shows more. Although we do have the monologuing, we do have, of course, Picard and Beverly sitting there talking when they should be shooting, things like that.
It felt classic Star Trek-y in that sense, that it's classic Star Trek TV is this often the people standing in a room talking in between action sequences. So that felt sort of classic. I did like the fact that we advanced a lot of, or we revealed a lot from the mysteries. There are a lot of little nuggets given to us to kind of advance us, all these questions that we have that are starting to be answered, like where these rogue changelings came from. And we also got some other interesting information, which we'll get to in a bit, about Picard and Jack and that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see. I do want to start with talking about where they are. They're at the Chintaka shipyard, which I'm like, what is Chintaka? That's from DS9. Right? That's several major battles of the Dominion War were fought in Chintaka. So that's kind of interesting. You would think there'd be a lot of
Chintaka scrapyard. So there's lots of junked, broken spaceships here from the Dominion War.
Right. And we hear 3 blind mice being whistled over the image, which turns out to have been Vadic, which is kind of curious. And what we're getting a lot of these little songs, like nursery songs throughout this series. And I'm wondering what 3 blind mice is referring to. That should be interesting.
Yeah, we should clarify how that comes up. Vadic, just like Odo, took the form of the scientist who studied him. Vadic did the same thing. Yeah. So when we're flashing back to what happened to Vadic during the Dominion War, there was a Section 31 scientist who was / torturer who was experimenting on her and the other 8 changelings. And that Section 31 scientist has the same face as Vadic. And as she would go about her work, she would whistle 3 blind mice.
Right. Right. In
Which has, if you think about it, so it's a very lab experimental song in this context because scientists experiment on mice and they make them run through mazes, see how they run. Right. And she's experimenting on the changelings.
That's true. It's interesting that Vadic took the face of her torturer, except she's got the scars now, which
she apparently inflicted on the torturer.
Right. And the project called Project Proteus, and it was designed, Section 31 was apparently, at least according to Vadic, trying to create the perfect spies, which, you know, it sounds like the sort of thing some idiot bureaucrat would come up with, like, oh, like if we could control these founders, we could totally create perfect spies.
Let's take our mortal enemies in wartime and try to turn them after torturing them. Just like, who approved this plan?
What could possibly go wrong?
It's not like people haven't tried that throughout all of history, and it has almost always failed. But
right, I mean, it kind of is a bit like the Manchurian Candidate story. You know, the perfect, brainwashed, and that's kind of what they're trying to do is brainwash the changelings into serving the Section 31, I guess. I thought that was fascinating. I'm really glad we got that in this episode, that we got that explanation. Who are these changelings and why are they doing this? But they're apparently not the ones behind the plot. They are serving someone else, this creature face.
And that's a hint that Dave Cullen was willing to drop in his review of this episode, that he says it kind of obliquely, but basically he indicated that the changelings are not the big bad for this season. It's going to be the people behind the changelings.
Right. And I wonder if we're going to yet again get another,
or at least Vadic is not the big bad.
Right.
If it's going to be more like Starfleet, bad people inside Starfleet, which over the past 15 years or so, it seems to be a very common theme that they keep wanting to go back to in Star Trek, which is the real enemy is inside this organization.
Yeah.
You know, Kelvin Trek did it. We have, we even started on Prodigy, right? I mean, Lower Decks, not Prodigy, or Prodigy too, I guess, but yeah.
Well, even going back to DS9 with the changelings, where you have Admiral Layton, who made it look like all the changelings had invaded Earth, and really it was the trick that he had set up, so that he could get control of Earth.
That's true. Even further back, yeah.
It's some guys. Sometimes you are in a Ruby Ridge situation, but not always.
Yeah,
we don't have to keep going back to that well to create the drama. All right, so I was excited to see Tuvok, even if he was a changeling. It was really nice to see Captain Tuvok there.
And this was the unplanned or unannounced reappearance that people had been talking about, where it's like, I showed this to my friend and she gasped when this character came on screen. It was Tuvok. That's who the reveal was. And it was great to see him. I like the way Seven is interacting with him. Because she's at the same time she's talking to him and asking for help, she's also testing him. She's suspicious if he's the real Tuvok or if he's a changeling, and so she alludes at one point to all of the Calto games that she played with Tuvok, and he says, you beat me many times at Calto.
Yes.
And she starts to relax. It's like, phew, okay, that was something a fake Tuvok would probably not know. But then she says, okay, so let's meet up. And actually she says, we need your help in contacting people and recruiting people to our side. And he says, that's going to be difficult given your current status. And she says, well, let's meet up somewhere. And he says, anywhere you'd like. And she says, how about Alicon 7? I had my neural patterns realigned there, my neural functioning restabilized there. And he says, okay, great, we'll meet there. And she's like, you are a total changeling. No Vulcan would go to Acleon or Alicon 7 after the anti-Kolinar riots there.
Yep.
And you were the one who realigned my neural functioning in a mind meld in that episode of Voyager, remember?
Yeah.
And at that point, Tim Russ gets to break his Tuvok character a little bit, and his eyes start to smile, and then he gets a little bit of a smile on his mouth and acknowledges, yeah, I'm a changeling. And then Picard starts talking to him, and he changes into a zombified Will Riker.
Yeah.
Yep.
And says, I'm as good as dead, just like you.
And then Jonathan Frakes
meaning
gets his salary for the episode.
Yeah. So it's like, what happened? Where is Riker? Because one of the things they have discovered is there's no record of Riker being in Starfleet custody.
Yeah.
And he's like, what's going to happen to Riker? And he turns into Riker. I'm as good as dead, just like you.
Mm.
They did a good job, even in the music, as Tuvok, Big Tuvok, and Seven are talking, because she mentions Kelto, and he says the thing about, oh yeah, you've beaten me many times, and when you see her relax, you hear the Voyager theme just under the music, just a little bit of it.
Luring you in.
Of course, it turns dark as soon as she realizes that he's not.
That was really well done. I have to say, they did a really good job of luring you into that. You know, they keep looking for Janeway, right? That's like they're trying to get. Is Janeway Commander-in-Chief Starfleet at this point? Why is Janeway the one they're looking for?
Because she's an admiral, and so she's high up in the food chain, but and she's still active service. So they want to reach her.
And she's someone like Tuvok that Seven trusts implicitly, that if this really is Janeway, she's going to do everything she can do to help them.
Mm-hmm.
Is this contemporary to Prodigy? Is it about the same time?
No, this is after Prodigy, because Prodigy was like 2470, 2480, if I remember right. And this is 2370, 2380, somewhere in there. And this is obviously 2401.
2401. Okay. So all right. So just kind of trying to keep it straight in my head where we are with the characters and where Janeway would be. So it is possible she could be CNC of Starfleet by this point.
Prodigy was 2383.
Okay. All right.
So this is 20 years roughly after Prodigy.
They also come up with a theory to explain why Vadic would want Picard's remains and why they want Jack. The hypothesis, because we know their plot centers on Federation Day, when stupidly they are gathering the entire Federation fleet in Sol system for the celebration. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember every 4th of July, we bring in every ship in the U.S. Navy to the vicinity around Washington, D.C.
Right.
It's like we completely demobilized the fleet that's protecting us and global shipping lanes for everyone. Every 4th of July, we pull that into the waters around Washington, D.C. Of course you do that. But Picard was going to give a speech there, as we've heard, and they were going to run a genetic test on him to make sure he was who he says he was, because I guess that's Federation protocol now after the Dominion War. And so the idea is they're going to use Picard's human remains to make a replicant, but they need Jack's blood for some reason so that it can pass the genetic screening and be animate. Now, none of that is plausible, and I don't think it's the real theory. I don't think it's what they're doing. I think they're guessing, that Picard and his gang are guessing, but that's not the actual explanation.
Go ahead, Falco. Are you going to say something what I probably say?
We do find out that Picard's body had some kind of anomaly that they thought was this syndrome.
Ironic syndrome.
Ironic syndrome, but it might be something else. And so that may be there's something about that, and combined with Jack's DNA.
Yeah.
So it was a parasite, I think they said, even, right? Did they say? I wasn't sure if I got it right, but I thought they said something about a parasite instead of Ironic syndrome.
That would be interesting. I don't remember that, but Data does say that they left it ambiguous. Data says the diagnosis of Ironic syndrome is questionable. And so
anomaly.
yeah, and so that means it's not Irumodic syndrome that killed him. It's something else.
Yep.
Okay. So, and that is presumably something that Jack has too.
Yeah, or maybe he doesn't. So I think this is going to be our golden parachute for Jack. Guess what? You don't have Irumodic syndrome.
Right. What I mean, he has whatever was affecting Picard, not Irumodic syndrome, and that's the thing that saves him. Right.
Maybe not.
Yep.
I also like the way, at least in the beginning of this episode, there's a great scene with the android where Data and Lore. So they tell us that the files that the android has for Alton Sung and B4 are just like memory read-only data files. They're not active personalities. They don't tell us for Lal.
That's what I noticed too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the Data and Lal, the Data and Lore personalities are active and they're fighting it out. And so we get this scene where Brent Spiner is changing between the two roles, and it's played really nicely because Lore is so deliciously obnoxious. You know, at one point Data is referring, he's like, Captain the Scimitar, and he's referring back to the events of Star Trek Nemesis.
Mm-hmm.
And Picard just says, Data, that was years ago. Oh, okay. That would explain why you're so decrepitly old. and he keeps doing that, just switching, you know, Data will start a sentence and Lore will finish it in some way that insults Picard. And I like Geordi's daughter Alondra says, has Lore always been this arch?
That was a great line. You may hear that again later on. And they may actually say something else too. Picard and Geordi are talking, and Geordi is like, you know, I'm not going to do anything to put Data in jeopardy because we've lost Data twice now. I don't want to lose him again. Mm-hmm. And Picard says, yes, I've lived through his death twice. You know, the second time being at the end of season one. Yes, I was keep them straight in my head, like Data. So he's like, we don't want to lose him again. And this is kind of a fascinating thing. Like the character who will not die is Data. Yeah. It is kind of fascinating. They keep bringing him back. And
well, they finally remembered you can actually make backup copies of Data.
Yes, literally, figuratively Data and literally Data. Yes, you can make backup copies.
That was a pun. Yes.
nice going, Father. Nice going. So it is interesting that we have these two completely separate personalities at war in separate partitions in the positronic brain. Are we going to now, do you think, have a composite Data Lore at the end of all this?
Maybe, and maybe Lal will be the one to bring them together.
That would be interesting. That would be nice. A nice resolution of the whole Lal storyline from TNG. Yeah. I think that would be good.
The Sung hologram said was the idea, was that Data would be able to take all these personalities and all this memory and create a one that Data controls, but that it's a mixture of the different personalities. So get more of the humanity from Lore and, you know, empathy from Lal and things like that.
Right.
Except I don't know why he needs Lore at all now, because he got the emotion chip in Star Trek Generations. As far as I'm concerned, that's about as human as he's going to get for a toaster, you know.
For a toaster. You know, just prior to that scene, there's a scene where Beverly and Picard and I think some others are talking about these new changelings and how their unique genetics make them targetable. That you could come up with a way to target them genetically, which then raises the moral question of, is just like the original Dominion war-ending virus, this is another morphogenic virus that would be targeted, and would it be genocide? Now, given that it's 10 changelings at most,
well, it wouldn't be genocide necessarily unless you consider them a separate species, in which case it would be. But I like that they had that discussion, because it is, and she says she's not adamant on this. She's weighing the morality, because once you start targeting someone genetically, you're one step away from genocide. And that's true. You build a virus or something or a weapon or a tracking system that's based on DNA, and you are really getting into those waters.
How close are we to that in our own time, perhaps?
Yeah.
You know, that I've seen some stuff about, killer drones that target people based on facial recognition or that sort of thing. Scary stuff.
Well, and there are concerns that viruses being worked on in labs are doing the same thing, where it doesn't have to be killer drones, just release it off into the world, and it will, most people will get a little bit sick from it, but the ones that it wants to target will be killed by it.
Well, we're not all psychologically scarred by that now, are we? So they set this, Jimmy, you mentioned they set this trap for Vadic. They lure her into the Chintaka, and
by the way, as part of that, so setting the stage for that, Vadic has been talking to the hand again, and her face overlord, who's clearly different than her, is talking to her and actually tortures her.
Yeah.
In the process. This is before we learn about her background as a modified changeling. By the way, like the name Proteus was a figure from Greek mythology who could take different forms, so it's an appropriate name for this project. But the floating face is torturing her and making her like melt and stuff painfully, and tells her that we must have the boy, meaning Jack, or you and your kind will find your own existence meaningless.
Right.
Which indicates the face is of a different kind.
Right. Yep, right. Before I get to the trap, there is an important scene in a turbolift with Jack and Sydney.
Yeah.
Where we get that first hint that Jack is, in addition to being a super soldier, is apparently telepathic because he reads Sydney's mind, which, the ultimate dating app. He reads her mind on exactly what she wants him to do in order for her to be attracted to him. And he freaks her out.
Yeah.
Like she's like, oh, why doesn't he just touch my hand? And so he touches her hand, and then she in her head, she steps out of the turbolift, stares at him, goes, did you just read my mind? And then the doors close, which is a really great moment, because he's kind of freaked out too, because I got from it, he wasn't sure he actually was reading her mind.
Right.
And then, so I thought that was well done.
And it's a nice show don't tell advancement of the plot, and it makes sense that he's telepathic, because he's been hearing Mom say find me together soon, so he's been in telepathic contact with Beverly. He just hasn't known that's what it is, and now he's starting to figure out I can actually read people's minds. And this is also a setup for the buddy super soldier scene later in the episode.
Right that was very well done, nicely done. And he does tell Picard around this point, when they have this discussion, I've always felt there was something wrong with me deep down inside.
I was like, dude, that's all of us. It's called original sin.
Right. I mean, he's barely out of his teens. Like every teenager thinks that there's something wrong with me deep down inside. That's adolescence. But and I can see where he might have dismissed it as such in the past, or Beverly would have. But now he's getting confirmed from that. No, there really is something wrong with you. So they do set up this trap. They have him. One of the things that's interesting to me is Vadic's henchmen are all this weird beak-nosed aliens that don't speak English or standard or whatever you want to call it.
I think it's a mask, but I'm not sure.
And I'm kind of curious what that's about. Is it purely dramatic from the showrunner point of view, because it sort of makes them scarier because of creatures in a mask who don't speak English, or is there maybe an internal logic to the story for it? Why do you think that is?
I think we have to see, but I interpreted them as some species that she has shared her changeling powers with.
Right, going back to to what you've seen before, so that might be an indication that you're right on that.
Or it could be that these are some of the other changelings that were in the lab, but that can't do it as perfectly. So they have to have the mask and everything. Otherwise, they still look like changeling.
Oh, God, you got me going back and forth between the two theories.
I still don't see the solid being able to change, but the other way around, the changelings being able to become solid.
it would be a fascinating development of the changeling lore, not the character, changelingness, that they could pass that on to solids. That would be a fascinating development, and a big development in Star Trek.
I don't see it because of the antipathy and how much how much these changelings don't like solids at all.
Yeah.
I don't see them then saying, but we'll give you the power to become like us.
Right. So in any case, they do set this trap, and it goes really well at first, except it's Beverly who notices that Vadic is strangely unconcerned about being trapped inside this force field, as if she knows something that they don't. And then she goes through the whole story of Project Proteus. She does correct Picard. He says at one point, Starfleet gave you the cure to the morphogenic virus. And she says, no, we had to steal it, which kind of is Odo stole it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Starfleet didn't exactly give it, but yeah, they created it. They had it. Well, we were going to give it to you until Odo took it. Maybe. She
also, well, with the help of Bashir and O'Brien, because they forced it out of Luther. What's his last name?
The Section 31 head.
The Section 31 guy. They forced it out of his dying mind.
Right. That's right. Right.
Which also has a great moment in it where they're trapped inside his dying mind, and they're in a corridor, and O'Brien and Bashir are like slumped down, sitting on the floor, and it's like, so this is it, and that's the tunnel that everyone talks about. It's like, yes, actual real world near-death experience lore.
On the other side of that is heaven, or judgment anyway.
Vadic also tells Picard and Beverly that Jack was never really for you either.
Yes.
Which is obviously a significant line. What her specific line about the cure is, one of our own had to steal it. And so that would be Odo's involvement in that plot.
Okay. Now, the whole reason Vadic and her henchmen are able to escape the trap is only because lore gets involved. So why was she so confident unless she knew that lore was going to be on their side and help them?
I think she was just confident because she's a supervillain.
Okay.
And I don't think she has any knowledge of lore. They certainly wouldn't have known that they were going to take Data. I mean, maybe they'll come back and say, aha, I'm so evilly clever, I knew you were going to take him. But
yeah,
there are too many, as Jeeves would say, there are too many imponderables in such a plan.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and it's possible this is something that we'll find out like the next episode, that she did know that she had worked with lore on this, and so on and so on. So I mean, it's, I don't know. It's right now it's just kind of like you said, she's just the super villain that's overly confident, and was actually successfully overly confident.
I also get the sense that Vadic is suffering mental effects from the torture and other aspects of her pained existence, so that could also explain some of it.
I like it when she's happy. Yes. I want my supervillains to be happy as they're doing evil.
Hello.
So maniacally happy.
Yes, that's suitably creepy. So Lord does get loose, of course, and starts running havoc because, as you said, Jimmy, someone left him connected to the Wi-Fi, and so we have this moment.
Have you
where
never heard of air gaps?
Right, exactly. Especially in the 24th and 5th century.
Well, and they even show on the screen that he was in sleep mode, stasis mode, and so it's like, put your computer to sleep, but was it really put to sleep?
So we end up having Geordi having to plead with lore and for Data to come out,
to get through to Data.
Yeah, and trying to remind him, and he doesn't get through too late. But my sense is, my expectation is that this is the fly in the ointment that Vadic isn't expecting, that Data will be key to overturning her control of the Titan and whatnot. But I guess she had to take the Titan now because we have to move to the next phase, which is the Frontier Day thing and that final confrontation, which obviously will happen at the last minute with Frontier Day, and everything will have to be solved at the last second.
Right.
Yeah. I want to say there's some really nice acting and writing on the part of the Geordi LaForge character in the conversation with Data Lore. LeVar Burton really acts his heart out talking about, because, he was Data's closest friend on the Enterprise, and he has not had the experience of Picard of getting to say goodbye to him. Data, both of the times he died was with Picard, not with Geordi. And he talking to the android, but specifically hoping to get through to the Data personality. He says, when you died, it broke me. And then the memory of you repaired me. And he's trying to make this connection with this submerged personality. And he gets really emotional. And I thought it was well written. I thought it was really well acted. And I liked that.
Yeah, I think the writer on this episode did a better job writing Geordi than the writer in the last episode. I mean, it was okay last episode, but I think this writer got Geordi better than the previous one.
He's also at a different position in the plot, in the story. He's been integrated into the crew now. Last episode was all about will he, won't he, and now he's committed, and so now he's much more like the regular Geordi.
Yep.
Right.
Also, speaking of being out of character, though, Beverly and Picard decide to just kill Vadic. Yeah, and it's like, wow, I haven't seen them do that before.
Yeah.
And the only reason they actually, when the force fields come down, they actually fire at the changeling, both of them, and it gets away. But they were prepared. They discuss it, and they're gonna kill Vadic just in cold blood because she's too dangerous.
Right. I mean, we've seen Picard make decisions like that in the past, where and it sort of reminds me a little bit, and the famous DS9 episode with Cisco making the decision in the pale moonlight. Yeah, making sort of in the moment decisions that casting aside the morality, this is a necessity sort of things, the end justifying the means.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't seen Picard say, okay, we have this person in a force field at our mercy. They are contained. Their threat is neutralized. Let's kill them.
Right.
Well, you even have Beverly saying, I've made an oath not to do this, but essentially forget the oath. I'm going to do it anyways.
Right. Yeah. She says, yeah, I took an oath to do no harm, but you should know I'm rethinking that promise.
Yeah.
And I guess the difference here is their child is at stake, and versus the more theoretical things. So interesting,
as well as all of the Federation, apparently.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This could get into the arguments for or against death penalty. Is this a person that you could safely contain? And
and
stuff like that.
It's like, also, she's your best source of information right now. If you're trying to save the Federation, keep her around for a while.
Yep. So the episode does end with Vadic, sitting in the chair of the captain's chair of the Titan and speaking over the intercom for the ship, and says, "Jack, if you can hear me, it's time you learned who you truly are." So they've made a promise here. We'll see if they follow up in the next episode, but that would be nice to find out more about who Jack really is and what's really going on. We've only got a few episodes left of this season, so
3.
Yeah, we've got to get the some answers going here so we can really bring the resolution. Any other notes on this episode?
A bunch.
Okay, Father Cory.
So I'll let Jimmy do his because I got nothing.
Okay, because we leaped over several aspects of the story. So one of them is the buddy super soldier scene, where you've got Jack on one side of a force field with a goon and Sydney on another side of the force field with a goon, and Jack immediately dispatches his, and then he starts talking telepathically to Sydney to help her, and then he does something that's a little telepathic, that's a little hard to describe, but what he's doing is either showing her the moves or guiding her through the moves that she needs to perform in order to kill the changeling, or he's just seized control of her. And it's what's unclear is how much in control is he, but he is definitely guiding her through the movements to kill that goon on her side of the force field. And so it's like you could read that as she's just become his puppet and he's possessing her, or it may not be that intense. It may be he's going through the motions on his side of the force field, and that's giving her a feel for what she needs to do. But okay, telepathic super soldiery, that's kind of significant. Let's see, then as a result of being able to look up, now that Beverly has the name Project Proteus, she's able to look it up on the Daystrom Station manifest, and she finds out that that Vadic and her cohort were experimented on in a way that involved an element called thelonium-847. Now, this is not a real element. It obviously is a very high, heavy element because it's got the number of nuclides in it, meaning protons and neutrons, is 847. And that's considerably higher than the highest element that we have. The highest element we have is element 118, or recently named organesson. And the highest isotope of it has 294 nuclides in it. And so about 300. And this element has almost 900. So this is a considerably heavier element, and she describes it as a stabilizing agent, which it could be, because one of the current predictions in physics, as elements get heavier and heavier, the strong nuclear force has a harder time keeping the protons from repelling each other. And they tend to fall apart. And that's why higher number elements like uranium and plutonium are radioactive. And tend to experience nuclear fission. And the heavier the element gets, thus far, on average, the more it tends to split, the shorter its half-life is. But it is theorized that just a little bit beyond element 118, there should be what's referred to as the island of stability, where instead of getting shorter, the half-lives start getting longer again. And so it could be that this thelonium element with a number of 847 protons and neutrons could be in that island of stability. It could be more stable and used for stabilizing some process, like Beverly said. So there's a hidden bit of good science in there. Then let's see, when Vadic is on the bridge. But since they've found this radioactive element, they can now that's involved in the changeling biology of these modified changelings, they can now track them, because you look right for the thelonium-847. That's going to tell you where the changelings are.
Right.
Then when Vadic gets on the bridge, she says, she's talking about how she's not a solid, she's fluid, and being liquid gives you this whole other perspective. You know what the river knows, and the river knows there are many ways to the same sea. And I'm going, you may know what rivers know, but you don't know much about geology. If you know what a river knows, it knows there's one way to the sea. The way it takes. It doesn't know about other rivers. That's so... I thought the writing was weak on that line. Also, I want to know, where are all the security officers? Why are there?
They offloaded everybody.
No, they left a skeleton crew, and that should include security officers. You're going into a dangerous situation. Is Rolaren really going to take all of their security, given the dangers of this situation?
Well, being as her own security officers that were with her were changelings, yeah, actually, I could see that being a plausible thing. That the changelings would go for the position of security.
She didn't. I mean, changelings may go for a position of security, but she didn't know her security guards were changelings. That was a surprise to her. So I know we want to focus on our main characters, but security should have had a better role, and Vadic and Ergun should not have just been able to walk onto the bridge at the end of the episode. Okay. Not without a fight.
Right.
More than beating up Captain Shaw.
Again.
Again.
This guy's getting beat up in this series. All right. So I guess I think that's all for this time. Let's move on to our feedback from last episode, The Bounty. And our first feedback comes from YouTube from August, who writes, maybe I'm wish casting, but I think all signs point to a return of the Enterprise D. In my opinion, Geordi is working on it in that hangar in his spare time, and they need those older, untraceable, and undamaged ships for the inevitable confrontation. Terry Metalis is a big TNG fan, and if I had the keys to the car like he did, I would bring it back.
I could see the older ships definitely playing a part. There was actually some comments on Discord about how the closing credits might show things like the Defiant A and Voyager involved. Now, John, you said that you thought that this was the Fleet Museum. I don't think so. I don't think that was the Fleet Museum that they showed, because it was a different.
Well, it was labeled.
Station.
It was labeled Starfleet Museum. So the Starfleet Museum is the old Starbase One around Earth.
No, Starbase One wasn't around Earth. I mean,
the space dock. Sorry, the space dock around Earth is the Starfleet Museum at Athens Prime, or whatever it was now.
The picture that they showed on Discord wasn't the Fleet Museum. It was another station where I had focused on all the registry numbers, but between the registry numbers were silhouettes of ships.
Other ships
like the Defiant and the Voyager and Enterprise A, but it wasn't listed those ships. This was a different scene in the closing credits from the Fleet Museum.
Oh, okay.
This is the one where you see the station, and then there's all the registry numbers around. So I agree with the idea that these older ships are going to play a part, because it's looking like the plot is to destroy the fleet when it's all gathered in one place. Or to take over the fleet when it's all gathered in one place.
Right.
As far as the D, do we really need to have the D recreated? Do we really need it?
It'd be one thing if he was building a scale model, but it's a big, the idea that Geordi would build this massive starship, we got to remember how big these things are, with the massive amount of resources involved to rebuild it.
It wouldn't be rebuilding it. It would be repairing it. Because the parts of it they survived that saucer crash.
Yeah.
So the saucer held together enough that they didn't all die.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
it was split in half.
you could take the star drive from a decommissioned Galaxy class and put rebuild the saucer and all that. But now the E is questionable. The E is questionable whether or not it was actually destroyed in Prodigy,
right,
or if it was just decommissioned. Which means could that hangar bay contain the E? And that I think would be a little more plausible.
Yeah. Or it could be just something entirely different. But I think Hangar 12 is going to play a role in future. You don't drop that and then not follow up.
And again, I can see the other ships at the Fleet Museum, at least the ones that are more recent, Voyager and Defiant Day and things like that, playing a role. I can absolutely see that as well.
Yep. So
I'm profoundly nervous about those possibilities, but I don't exclude them as the way the writer's going to go.
Our next feedback comes from Chris S., who sent in the email, who says simply, thank you. That's it. That's the feedback for this week. And this is what Chris included in the email. For those of you listening, it's a photo of a bottle of Left Hand Brewing Milk Stout Nitro and a half-empty glass.
Good choice.
I think the glass is half full.
When you're drinking beer, it's always pessimistic. It's always pessimistic.
You're always halfway to the next one. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
Thank you, Chris. That was appreciated. All right. And that's it for our feedback this time. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek, including David B., Jordana A., Jason E., Ricky T., and Jim H. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So we'd love to hear what you think of this episode of Picard called Dominion. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, send an email to trek@sqpn.com, or visit that StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can also leave comments on our YouTube channel, where you can watch the Secrets of Star Trek at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next new episode of Star Trek Picard called Surrender. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, Don, but now I want a beer. It's probably in the morning, so I can't.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you. I'll be happy to meet you at Acleon 7, and don't live long or prosper.
And once again, I'm Don Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. Remember, has lore always been this arch? Yes. Yes, he has.